Hello and welcome to Tio's Ban Appeals UI. This is a side project I had been working on for mostly the month of October. I've been doing it on and off with my work, and I've just decided that it's time to actually put together a video and show what I've done. This in no means is going to be used in production applications. This is just a side project that I thought would be fun to make. So without further ado, let's get into it. First and foremost, the Ban Appeals UI uses Twitch to log in. Through third parties, when you click and go in, it'll redirect and do all of the authentication flow for you. As you can see, this is using my auth and my username. This is purely so we can track who is submitting the request or who is going through it. Granted, through implementation and more architectural decisions, if this were to ever be used, it probably would be best to not allow more than just admins and Tio to use this. As we can see, we have 4 buttons to choose from: Submit Appeal, View Appeal, Submit Evidence, and Submit Judgment. These latter 3 won't actually be useful at the moment because we do not have any appeals to view, submit evidence for, or submit judgment for. So what we'll do is we'll submit an appeal. As you can see, now that we're in the Ban Appeal submission page, we have a few fields to fill out. The Twitch username will either be the person who's creating the appeal, or somebody else if they are creating it for them, in the case of mods. The next field is where they were banned. We have Twitch, Discord, or both. In the event of a Discord ban, or both, a new username field will pop up for the Discord username. However, to keep everything on track with logins and such, we always keep the Twitch username as an input field. The next options are, why were you banned? Let's just put in some dummy data there. The next is, do you think this ban was justified? Pretty easy options, as it's a radio button that allows you to select yes or no. The next is a field asking why you think you should be unbanned. The last field is anything else that you'd like to add. This is the only optional field. Everything else needs to be filled out in some way, shape, or form. Keep in mind, the default for the Twitch username is the submitter, so it does not actually have to be filled out. Let's click Submit. Now we can go view the appeal. As you can see, we have all the data that we submitted, plus a few little extra buttons. One thing to note is that the Twitch username and Discord usernames will be hidden by default. This is so that if somebody is streaming and going to review the evidence, we do not accidentally reveal the user who submitted the appeal. But for mods and admins who are reviewing evidence or submitting more evidence, they can see who actually was the user that submitted this ban or who it is for. Let's look at the edit and delete functionalities. The edit can be accessed by any mod or admin at any point in time. However, if we were to allow users to access this data, they would only be allowed to edit it in this stage, prior to any evidence or mod data being submitted. We'll see that later. The Notes from Admin is a special page or section which admins can add data or things that users can see, or notes for ban appeals for reviewers to see later. Once the edits are complete, you can click Submit and it will be added to the appeal. Now that we can see the admin notes here, we can talk a little bit about what this means for the user. The user at this point would come back and see this, potentially, and then edit and make changes of their own. All these changes would not change the state from anything other than pending. There are 4 states of which a ban appeal can be in: pending, which is right after the user submits it, and anything prior to evidence submitted by mods; the reviewing stage, in which evidence or banned by data has been submitted by a mod; and then the ban upheld, or the unbanned states, which are only submitted after judgment has been handed down. Now let's see what mods can actually do. These three buttons are only visible to mods. They are adding mod data, which is banned by and evidence, reviewing the evidence, and then submitting judgment. Let's see what mod data can be added to a ban appeal. First, we should note that you can add who banned the user. You can have multiple banned by mods, seeing as there can be multiple times where a user has been banned. For that first, let's just say Hobo did it. The ban date is also a text input because we do not have an absolute idea of when the user is banned, or if we do, that's great, but not all the time do we have an absolute date. There's also the instances where this was before anybody kept any records of anything, so we don't actually know when they were banned, we just know it happened before a certain date. Likewise, you can also input a very specific date should you need to. Or, if you're not a heathen like me and you work outside the US, you can input the date correctly. Now we can go view who actually banned them. Another thing to note is that now that they've been added, we can actually delete them as well in case we accidentally added an extra banner. Now we can add evidence. Evidence is usually a file and text associated with it. There doesn't always need to be text associated, so this actual input here is optional. However, we always need to attach a file. Note that the text field is in Markdown, so we can make creative headings or we could make lists. And then we can submit. We can also add more evidence as needed. Sometimes, images that are attached as evidence are self-evident and do not need any further comments. That is why this markdown is optional. You can also delete evidence should it be accidentally added, but we'll save that for later. One thing to note, now that we've added evidence, is that our status has changed from pending to reviewing. Here, we can actually see the evidence that we've already added. Now, we can actually go and add another one. This will be the one that we delete. We can also delete in place when we add it, in case we add it on accident, but let's just delete it from here. As you can see, it is no longer in the tabs, and if we exit, go back, it won't be in here either. Now let's review all the evidence submitted for us. As you can see, the file submitted and the notes attached with it are here, as well as the banned by data. The banned by is global to the submission. Therefore, it will be displayed across all evidences. However, the notes are only displayed on the evidence they were attached to. In this case, you can see that the markdown has been converted into a nice readable format from the heading or the lists. There are many more markdown options that can be added. Here, since our second evidence had no notes, we don't display anything with them. But like I said, the banned by is global and can be displayed for every evidence submitted. Now that we have reviewed the evidence, let's submit our judgment. One thing to note is that you can move into any state from this field. However, on a normal judgment submission, you would only go from reviewing to uphold ban or unban. However, there are cases where we would need to resubmit the judgment back to reviewing, or we would need to move the reviewing state back to pending so the user can edit their statements. We're upholding the ban. This means that the user is staying banned, and we are giving them the option to resubmit or not. If a user resubmits, we give the user the option to resubmit, we will actually provide them a date on which they can resubmit after. This is in non-American time. So this is for the 3rd of January, 2023. However, we can set it at any date we choose. There are also notes to be added to the judgment. These are not required. However, for resubmissions, you can include things like the user needs to submit page essay, for example. This is submitted. We should be able to see that the ban has been upheld. After a second, it takes a bit to load. But upon clicking the upheld status, we can see if it's resubmittable, when you can resubmit after, and what needs to be attached, if anything, on the notes. Now let's talk about resubmissions. If a user has submitted a ban appeal already that is in the ban upheld status with resubmission allowed, this checkbox will be visible to them. Once the checkbox is clicked, they will be allowed to select a previous appeal, and then from there they can add any additional resubmission data, such as essays or additional reasons on why they need to be unbanned. Similarly, they will have all the original fields available to them as well, in case any more additional information needs to be submitted. One thing to note as I submit this is that there's actually a character minimum on a few of these items. Once we view the resubmitted appeal, we now have a button that shows us that this was resubmitted. Upon clicking this button, it will take us back to the original submission. You will also note the arrows here. These are standard on any appeals and not just for resubmitted appeals. As we can see, it takes us to the next one submitted. If I were to submit another one real quick, review it, it will show us the ones submitted as well. Now let's look at the tables. We view appeals, we have the 3 that we've submitted today. Now that we have some pending, we can also submit evidence and show which ones are ready to submit evidence for. We don't have any that are in the reviewing state, so we won't have anything to submit for judgment. However, we can also do this from the comfort of the table itself, and we don't have to really click all the tabs. Close out, let's actually unban the most recent one we submitted. As we can see, we're waiting for evidence on the judgment notes, but what I did say earlier is that we can go to any status in the judgment tab. So now we show you as unbanned. As a last note, you can also log out and it will take you back to the login screen. That's all I have for you today. If you would like to know any technical or implementation details, please let me know in the comments. I can either add them in the description or I can make a follow-up video on how I implemented this. Thank you and have a nice day.